Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Speak on It. I am your moderator slash hostess slash person who's going to talk a lot of nonsense for the next 30 minutes, and my name is Lucy Stoole. I am a drag performer, activist, actor, a little bit of everything, based here in Chicago for the last 15 years. And I'm so excited to be here having this chat with y'all today. Also joining me is another fantastic Chicagoan. We have Garnet here. Hi.
Hi.
So great to have you in conversation today, love. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
You know what? I cannot complain. As I was saying earlier, I just had a little bit of hair show up from Paris, so I'm feeling very fancy right now, living my fantasy. Are you enjoying this weather?
Oh, yes. It's so beautiful. I'm really excited. Since I got a kitten last fall, I'm excited to start leash training her so I can take her out on walks.
Oh, my God. Leash training? Are you serious?
Yes. She's really high energy, and so I want to help her burn some of it off. So I figured maybe she'd like going for walks.
I think that's a great idea. You know, get the little kitty cats out there in the world. I have a puppy who is also extremely high energy. So we do a lot of hiking and anything just to try and get him to chill for a little bit. So I absolutely understand where you're coming from with that. But we could talk about puppies and cats for the rest of this episode. But I actually am so excited to have you here because, Garnet, you do a lot of work in the community and are also a drag performer here in Chicago. And I thought coming up on this whole Pride season, it'd be great for us just to kind of have a discussion about, you know, gender and intersectionality and being Black and being a part of this scene today.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely something that's been on my mind lately with people already bringing up posts and already getting in arguments about what belongs at Pride and what doesn't belong at Pride and whose pride is it and whose pride is it not? And It's kind of just like, it's not even June yet. Let's just chill a little bit.
Same. I'm like seeing all of this discourse going on and I'm just like, can y'all leave me alone? I haven't even got used to the fact that I'm supposed to be in front of people again.
Yeah.
And here you are telling me, you know, like what should or should be happening at Pride. Some of the conversations have been like pretty across the board too about that. How do you feel about this whole no kink at Pride discussion? I mean, I think it's a good chance for us to speak about it, especially since too, we will have a lot of the younger viewers like viewing this. And yeah, I want to hear your opinion on that.
I think it really depends on what the person means when they say no kink at Pride or pro kink at Pride. Mm-hmm. I think what a lot of people are saying is pro people coming to Pride wearing like their kink wear or their leather. But I think there's also another group of people who are pro, let's show up to Pride and do our kinks in public and have sex in public without asking the consent of everybody around us. And that's where I'm like, no, ma'am. That's not what Pride is here for. It's not for people. Well, like we know the people who would be doing this would be white people. It's not for white people to come and center their own sex lives at Pride and
subject other people to do that.
Subject other people to it. Like you don't know other people's issues. Some people just might not want to see that. Other people have plenty of trauma and baggage on their plate and don't need to be triggered in that way. And personally, I just think there's a place for every kind of Pride. Like if that's what you're into, like there's going to be so many bars and nightclubs that cater to kink or even like dungeons and places that are open where you can go and do that in a public setting, but in a private building where everyone is consenting to that. Yeah. Otherwise, I think like there should just be a level of respect for one another where we wouldn't do something non-consensual to the other people we're there at Pride with.
Exactly. And, you know, like that's kind of where I am with it also, basically the whole way you explain that. It's not shaming any of that. It's not saying that there's not a place for it. But like you said, there is definitely a need for there to be consent. And if you're at an event with 500,000 people, you can't properly get consent from everybody that's in there.
Yeah.
And there's also people who can't even legally give consent to it. So like when you think of it in that way, it's like maybe just refrain from, I don't know, having sex in public and, enjoy the fact that we can celebrate, that everyone can have their own kinks inside of this community and coexist together,
Definitely.
And like, I guess more of the question for it and more of the reason I was thinking of it is especially just because of, like some of the younger people that would be coming to Pride, on one hand, I didn't want anyone, seeing anything before their time, before their age. But then on the other hand, I also didn't want anyone who may be questioning to feel, like shamed or like, this is something that they have to hide. Like if someone is a burgeoning, like leather fan or something like that, I wouldn't want them thinking that, they don't have a place. So yeah, I don't know. It was a tough discussion to have, but I think that one of the great things about the last year and, going into the future, I hope, is that we have started opening this dialogue and just having dialogue, period. Because I felt for so long that we couldn't even ask questions or, inquire or, actually try and get to the bottom of things because people were just so against, questioning, the status quo or what was supposed to be happening. And I really feel like that kind of tide is changing, but that we still, of course, have so much more work to do on it. But how do you feel about that? Do you feel like the community is changing for the better and that you're actually seeing it? Or was it a whole lot of lip service we got last year?
See, I've had, just in my personal life with people in the community, there's been people that I've really thought I could trust. And then it turns out that when I go to lean on those people, or I have this expectation that that their words are going to follow through in their actions, that's not been happening. I think one issue is being in the queer community, there's a pressure of you have to be this very woke person. So everybody wants to say the right things, because if you say the wrong things, people aren't going to want to hang out with you or be around you or hire you for stuff. But when it actually comes to turning that into more than just a theory, like you have to put it into practice. Just as an example, like people love to talk about believe survivors and hold abusers accountable, but and that's a great ethos to put out there. But when somebody comes to you and says, hey, this person is my abuser, and then it's on you to be like, well, yeah, but they're my friend. Yeah, but they have stuff that I want and they're going to share that stuff with me, or they have power and money, or I think they're cool, or they're really attractive. And then you have to make that decision to say, but I'm still going to hold them accountable. I'm not going to keep booking them for shows knowing what I know about them, because that's not what I've preached. And I need to own up to what I've been preaching. I've found that a lot of that is not happening. So it's hard for me to really judge because we're not out in public yet and actually putting things physically into action with each other. But I guess I've just learned some hard lessons this year about you can't believe people just based on their words. You got to wait till they prove it with their actions before you believe anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, for any of the younger people watching, I think that is still a great piece of advice to have. Like I said, it's so easy to pay lip service and to say what's right. And like you said, to also try and appease the internet gods to make sure, that you look woke enough and everybody agrees with what you might be saying. But then when it comes time to actually do those things, like, are you actually putting in the work? Are you willing to put yourself, in front of these people to help them? Are you willing to go out on the line and, maybe piss some people off to actually speak the truth and to get people to listen to what you're saying? That is something that I feel like I have been doing like my entire career. And even though I still think there's parts that I could be doing more in that situation, it does like become disheartening to me to see that I've lost so many gigs. There are places that won't book me. There are big events that, still won't have me, all because I was trying to advocate for the better treatment of people in our community. So, yeah, I absolutely have seen that firsthand. And it's definitely one of the things about reopening that has me kind of questioning some of the relationships that I have in the neighborhood and with some of these businesses in general. I try to be a very trustworthy person, like upfront, until someone gives me a reason to not to. But I also think it's important that we all have boundaries and that we are respecting others and our own boundaries in these situations and protecting ourselves from being hurt anymore.
Yeah, I think what I found is that in a lot of ways, I can't expect people who don't have to constantly fight for every little scrap that they get to put in the same level of effort. Like when I look at the Black queens and kings and things in our community, I see people who are endlessly putting in work to not just make things better for themselves, but for the whole community. And I don't necessarily see that same level of energy reflected back in white members of our community or even non-Black POC in our community. It's kind of like everybody's just waiting for all the Black performers to do something again so they can ride the coattails.
Thank you. And honestly, I'm so glad you are saying that because I've been having this internal conversation and also with close friends of mine. But I was getting to this point where I was feeling frustrated and I'm like, will someone else pick up the baton? And will it not be another Black person? Like, why are we carrying the brunt of so much of this labor of trying to make the community a better place? Like, why are we the ones doing this? And I mean, we know the answer to it, but also I can't believe when anyone else is saying when they're leaving us with the brunt of this, when it's not our problem to fix. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It kind of leaves me at a spot of like, so will we ever be able to dig ourselves out from under this pile of rocks? Or are they going to be continuously throwing another brick on? You know what I mean?
For me, it's extra strange because I feel like two groups who are always having to do everything themselves are Black people and disabled people. And so it's kind of this pool because when you go to the disabled activism community, it's a lot of white people. It's a lot of people who have the privilege to be up front and center stage. And like when I go to things based in the Black community to do things together, there's not really a lot of disabled people present in those conversations. So sometimes it can feel like, even though I'm in these groups where everybody is stepping up to do the right thing, I still feel in a way like in the background. Yeah. Because I don't quite fit in either place. And it's weird to feel that way because it's kind of like with all the stuff that's been going on with me and with our community at large, I feel like it kind of hit me that these are the only two groups of people that I feel like I can trust and have faith that they're going to do the things that they say they do, because if they don't do it, nothing will get better for them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And Garnet, you have went through a whole lot of struggle in the past few years, just trying to secure like stable housing for yourself. Would you speak a little bit on that and about some of the struggles that you're going through with the city of Chicago, just being a disabled person here and trying to live?
Oh, it's so difficult. For example, there's just not enough accessible transit. If I want to go somewhere or even go somewhere to even look at an apartment and I'm trying to plan out transit, there's basically the entire blue line, except for a few stops downtown. I can't use the blue line. And the same thing with the orange line. I think right now, green and brown are the ones that are fully accessible. But red also has a huge gap of no accessible stops. So that's already a problem. Then if I actually start looking for places, there's not a simple way to do it. Everything on our website is extremely outdated. We have multiple organizations that say they're here to help disabled people, especially with housing. And then when you call them, they don't, or all their information's so outdated, they can't even tell you which places are still doing like subsidized housing.
Yeah.
With the ADA law, only buildings built after it went into effect in the 90s have to be ADA compliant. Any building built before then is grandfathered in. So with most of the buildings around here being older, a lot of those aren't accessible. So then the only things that are accessible to a lot of disabled people are these brand new, like multi-million-dollar high rises that nobody can afford.
Yeah, I'm like the most expensive places.
The most expensive places are the only places that a lot of the absolute poorest people can live, which is why you see such a huge correlation with disabled people and homelessness.
Yes, which we can't help but look at and say, that's on purpose.
Yes, it's definitely on purpose. It's a push of eugenics, I'm going to say. It's a push to get get rid of all the undesirables and all the people that don't fit into an idea of what the powers that be want Chicago to look like, or the kind of people they want to be around. They want money to stay with the people who have it. Nobody in power actually wants their money or their power to be dispersed and share that with people.
No. And we have seen that through like so many parts of our community too. Like no one really wants to do that. And we are fighting a monster that we now can see and don't know how to fucking kill.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, it just feels so impossible. Even me being like, okay, I'm going to go through the system and do everything possible that I can to find a place to live. And every single organization has failed me. I've reached out to multiple different people and organizations through the city of Chicago, and none of them are able to do anything. They say that we have this housing crisis, especially for accessible housing. But the truth is, even if you mark yourself as somebody needing disabled housing in the subsidized housing system for Chicago, it doesn't then go into a separate pile or notify anybody. You're still sitting in the same bowl of soup with millions of other people who aren't disabled. So then they're saying, well, we just don't get any disabled applicants. So we just gone ahead and given those accessible units to people who don't need them because there's nobody disabled who wants them. But the reality is, we are a small minority, and it takes a lot of work and effort and knowledge that a lot of disabled people don't necessarily have to even look all this information up and make these accounts and jump through all of these hoops. And it just kind of slays me that after all of that labor and all of that work, the only way that I can stay here is by crowdsourcing rent for an accessible apartment.
Yeah. Yeah. After all of that work, after all of the money that has come in and been donated to the police force and everything else, it's like there's nothing available to help the people who need it most. Like, what a huge disservice. This city is not doing great by its people if the less fortunate are struggling in this way. And it's just, it's so disgusting for me to like have to see and to like hear this story from you, someone who's working so hard to try and maintain and live and be able to also create in this. Like, something has to change. So when I think about it, and especially the fact that we're talking to like some young creatives and young people in Chicago, what would you say to the people who are coming up now who, you know, might be the next policymakers and creatives and people that are able to influence and maybe make some changes to actually help everyone?
I'd say if you want to make policy, we need to go back to a grassroots system where you're actually going door to door and speaking with your constituents. I'm tired of the only people whose voices who get heard at all are people who have the time, the transportation, the power to show up at someone's office and sit there and wait and make an appointment to see somebody. You're not actually hearing the majority of your community because we're out working jobs, we're out taking care of children, we're out serving our community.
Yeah.
So like just going back to that grassroots method would make a huge difference in my opinion. I also think creating, if you get to be in power, I think creating more civilian positions within the government system would be great, because the only people that we're really seeing a lot of the time is these career politicians who grow up with a lot of benefits and access that we don't have. But I want to see the people who have had to struggle working like overtime at McDonald's to bring home enough money so that you can send your kid to daycare the next day. I want to hear from that person, their perspective. I want to hear from the people who actually make Chicago, Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, what a disservice to not be including those people in the conversation, because like you said, they make the city absolutely what it is. Lori Lightfoot don't make this city shit. Like, you know.
Oh, Lori Lightfoot holds up inside of her house and has the police barricade her in.
Yeah, she lives on my block, by the way. So sometimes I literally can't drive to my fucking house because cops are posted up everywhere and won't let us go down the street. So, excuse me. Excuse my language. Sorry, I got a little heated in there. But yeah, things like that, you know. And when I look at that, the fact that she has cop detail outside of her house 24/7, like the money that goes into paying them to be there to do nothing. Like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing here? And to say that, you know, we don't have the money for it or we can't find it or anything is such a lie. And we can see it over and over again that these people are doing these sort of things on purpose to defund us, to make it harder for us to survive and live, just like you said, like to try and erase us and erase our existence and what we've done here. And we're not going to let it happen. That's number one. That's number one.
I'm actually really curious what you have to say to a lot of the youth that are listening right now about leadership and what it means to be a good leader, and how do you emotionally handle all that comes with being a leader?
Well, I can say, number one, that it is tough, and that it will be very difficult at moments to when you realize that everyone's kind of looking at you for the answer. Because a lot of the times you may not have the answer yourself. But one of the things that I learned very, very early on in this is that I'm not actually alone. And I mean, personally, I don't think of myself so much as a leader, but as, you know, one of the people in this pack. I'm a part of something that's so much bigger. And maybe I do have a platform that's a little bit more, or maybe I am a little bit more vocal. That I always use that as the reason why, you know, I will continue to like say and like do these things. I just feel like for us to ever make fundamental change, that someone's going to have to continue to be the one that speaks up. And as much as sometimes I wish it wasn't me continuously, I'm going to continuously be that person, because I just refuse to live a life that's a lie. I refuse to perpetuate non-truths. I refuse to continue to allow some people to not succeed when I know that we all can be. So more than anything, I would say to find your power by finding your voice and using it the best way you can figure out how to. I think a lot of people think of this as like only one way to go about it. And there's so many different ways to like go about like handling these things and, you know, quote unquote, being in charge or being a leader in these situations. So yeah. And also don't be afraid of criticism and never stop allowing yourself to listen to everyone around you. So many people get in a position of power or leadership and they start to think that theirs is the only voice just because they've done some things right or, you know, they've helped people. But most of the reason why the people got there is because of all the people around them. So, like, don't ever stop listening to the people around you. And that includes the people you don't like. You should be, you know, working for everyone. And something that I try to remind people in the drag community is we should be taking care of everybody. even the bitches I don't like, even some of the people that may not deserve it, in our own minds. Like, I want to make sure that everyone is safe as possible and everyone is able to live their lives and be supported as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a great takeaway. And it's a hard lesson to do. It's hard to not want to see the people who have harmed you suffer in return in some kind of way. But
ooh, yes, it is.
but it's very hard. It's very hard to actually get any progress made. Like, I don't know what it is, but I've been quoting the Hunger Games a lot lately. But it's just like when they finally overthrow the president, and then they're like, but we all think it would be good to do one last Hunger Games with all capital children because that would make us feel good.
Yeah.
And Katniss is like, no, I think we should just stop having any Hunger Games. That seems like a better idea.
Yeah. It's like, no, that doesn't actually level the playing field. And it also ends up dirtying your hands in this situation. Like, why would you try and use the master's tools to burn this down? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. So as difficult as it can be, like, yeah, you have to know when to have some grace. Also when to be quiet was another thing that I had to learn through last year. Just because I always wanted to be shouting back at people that, had something to say against me or the work that I was doing or about the people that I was trying to help. And there's no need for us to be wasting our voice on them because they already have, their opinion and how they feel about it. So, like, why am I bringing any more stress to myself in that situation? So remember also, give yourself some peace. Like, everyone needs to remember to give themselves peace. Like, we do not need to be killing ourselves anymore for this capitalist machine and for these racists that are trying to attack us and take our joy away. Like, I am more concerned about making sure that my community is changed from the ground up than I am about arguing with the racist or, trying to run somebody out of town. Like,
exactly. I think especially television and social media has shaped is that revolutions are started by one person who is a magical person with the power to change everything. Yeah. And that's just not true.
No.
It is a whole collective of ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
Yes.
And even though the work can seem overwhelming, great power can come from any package. If you're willing to step in and do any kind of the work or do any kind of the labor, you can be a person who makes change. You can unite with other people because in numbers there is power. And I know especially for myself as a teenager, I remember feeling so powerless as a young person and feeling like, well, there's all this shitty stuff going on around me and I don't like anyone else and I don't like myself and I don't like where I am and I don't like where I'm going. Yeah. And I don't know how my life is going to play out in any sort of like amazing way at all. I feel like this tiny little pea pod of a person, but I grew up to be somebody who's just decided I've had enough of this and decided that I have to do something, even if it's just a little thing and it ends up only a tiny few people benefit from the work that I do. That's worth it to me. I just need to do something that's making the world that we live in that much better.
It is, Garnet. And for everyone watching, like, I hope you all took that to heart because any little part, anything that you do to make this world, your community, just the people around you a little bit better means that you are a part of what we're doing and making the world a better place and trying to make some lasting fundamental change. Any little thing. I don't care if it's just you're a part of the drag community and you make sure to book diverse shows. Like, I don't care if it's not even about you booking it, if it's just you speaking up on it, and having, people of color's backs in these situations and being a true ally. Like, those small things do make the big difference. And we all need to be committing ourselves to doing that in every way, every day. And that's the hardest part. And that's the part we've been talking about a lot is a lot of people don't understand that this is a commitment. And this is not something that starts overnight or happens in a year or even 5 years. This is going to take a lot of time and a lot of work. And everyone has to be committed to this going forward. So we're about to close out in a second, but I wanted to ask you one last question. And that is, what would you say or what advice do you have for young creatives who are watching this today?
Well, number one is let people prove things to you through their actions, not their words. I think also from like a creative standpoint is you have to get over this idea of waiting for someone else to discover you. You have to go out and make yourself and like discover yourself almost. If you want to do something, don't wait for somebody else to give you permission to do it. Go out and seize those moments for yourself, however small they may be starting off. I started out just doing open mic nights and now I'm here where I can I'm getting booked for all kinds of shows and I have fans all in different countries and I'm meeting all different kinds of people through this wonderful art form. And it's just because I was brave enough to take a risk and try something new and try something that I've always wanted to do. And so I think that's something we should really take to heart. And my third piece of advice is take care of your skin, because when you get to be my age, you're going to have a moment where you look in the mirror and be like, I look like a potato. But that doesn't have to happen if you start taking care of your skin now.
You hear that, everybody? And Garnet is very correct. Take care of your skin. And I mean, we've already covered the bases on this. I feel like I've talked a lot on it. But if I had one more thing to throw in, it would be to mind your business. Just mind your business. Stay in your own business. Take care of your own and you will be good. Thank you everyone today for joining us for Speak On It, the Radical Fit edition. This awesome series happens with Chicago Public Library, and we have different conversations with creatives focusing on gender identity and equity. So continue to tune into these, please. I am Lucy Stoole. Garnet, where can these people find you and support you after this?
Sure. I'm most active on Instagram. I'm at It's Transfat on Instagram. You can find me there, and I post a lot of my drag and my art and a lot of the dolls I customize, because that's a thing that I do.
Yes, and they are super cool. I love them. I can't wait. I'm going to get a customized Lucy Stoole doll one day. It's going to happen. And y'all can find me online at Ty is Lucy Stoole. That's TYISLUCYSTOOLE. Thank you so much for everyone tuning in today. Thank you again to the Chicago Public Library and Rebirth Garments for making this happen. We love y'all. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.